Good morning, Kerry.
Good morning, Debunking. Hi, Dan.
I'm so good. Better for seeing you, man. Here we are again on a webinar as opposed to a face-to-face. Yay! I don't have to wear long pants.
I know. Don't stand up, Dan.
Welcome to
Not
all
that
our
kind of show.
attendees.
Okay.
No. Welcome to all our attendees. Everyone's coming in. It's awesome. It is 10 o'clock. So are you going to kick us off, Kerry, or are we going to wait a minute for more people to join?
No, everyone can just come in as I am accepting them in the waiting room. So I'm going to say good morning, guys, and really warm welcome to our webinar as we debunk the myths of 2027. You really do have less time than you think. Thank you all for joining us today as we delve into all stages of the migration process, no matter what stage you are in. We really want to deep dive into how you can fuel future growth with high availability, improve SAP service reliability, deploy SAP services faster, and reduce IT management complexity. I always like the saying, help me help you. So we really do welcome your active participation in today's event. Please do use the Q&A functionality and pose any questions you'd like answered. We will be discussing these during and after the panel discussion. If you'd like to raise your voice and ask your questions directly to our panel, please use the raise hand function and I'll promote you so you can ask directly. This is your session, so let's engage and let's answer your questions. And without further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Daniel Robus, our host for today's session.
Thank you, Kerry. From my side, I've been looking forward to this session for a while, mainly because I can pick on Sean and Johan and ask them really uncomfortable questions. But before we begin, if you're attending one of our webinars, you would know that I take coffee quite seriously. And today I've got a Brazilian blend that was given to us by a friend of ours who lives in our estate. He comes from South America and comes from Brazil. And he says, this is the finest blend that I'm ever going to drink. So one good thing is coming out of this session. I'm getting a new cup of coffee. The other side of this session is we are going to understand just what is happening in this massive opportunity for all SAP customers. 425,000 global customers. Hey, I was talking to myself there. 425,000 customers trust SAP around the world. 425,000 customers. I'm not sure how many users are on SAP, but that's a staggering amount. And everybody has to migrate into the new environment. And one of the questions that I asked in preparation is, why are we having this discussion if we know we want to take advantage of the modern systems? And I think it's because the complexity, I simply don't understand how complex this is. We've seen a number of S4HANA failures in public. Revlon springs to mind. It was a big misunderstanding between the SI, the company itself, and SAP. Haribo, who I don't know that well, LeasePlan in 2019, a Dutch fleet management company, really struggled, which means this is a pertinent discussion to have. But before we go into the discussion, let's just meet who I'm going to be grilling today or asking guidance from. Johan, tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get onto this call?
Thank you for this, Daniel. Yes, my name is Johan Els, and I'm a senior pre-sales engineer for SUSE. I look after everything from an open source point of view. And I got into this call because I believe that a lot of companies need to understand how they can build a very reliable system that can actually work for the organization. Not that people need to work for the system, but the organization can understand how they can build out reliability.
Awesome. Thanks very much. And Johan, coming from a pre-sales background, you get to see things right at the beginning of the process. And what we're going to be asking Johan questions around is, how do we make small changes in the beginning that'll have big impacts, positive impacts at the back end? So we're going to get to that. Sean, who played Ching Chong Cha at the office to get onto this webinar and was the unequivocal loser. Sean, how do you fit into CoCre8 and what's your main focus?
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so I'm a senior solutions architect at CoCre8. We look after Fujitsu's interest in South Africa. So within that context, I look after our SAP and integrated systems portfolio. So from a pre-sales solutions architecture point of view, I try and help and guide our customers with some of the tough decisions they need to make around the SAP and the platforms they would run the systems on.
Oh, that's awesome. And Sean, coming from a rebranding exercise at CoCre8 from Fujitsu, is it an opportunity to redefine yourselves? And what has this meant for you at CoCre8? How come this rebranding?
Oh, no, definitely a lot of opportunities for us. So moving into a wholly owned, locally owned company, that was a massive opportunity for us. We're now BE level 1, which in the past we were never able to achieve. So that on its own brought a lot of opportunities. A little bit more autonomy. So local decision-making power. We can go into a few different directions that in the past would have been a little bit more restricted from Fujitsu. So that's fantastic. Yeah, I think we've really taken the bull by the horns. And there's definitely a fantastic opportunity for us to renew local partnerships as well, which is something we love and we've embraced.
That's brilliant. I love the way we're building local and we're building for Africa. And I think that a lot of that's coming through in the way we run projects as well, is that we need local expertise. And you said in your title that you're architect. The first thing on architecture is helping customers design solutions that work for them. And high availability seems to come through in all of these SAP projects. What is high availability to you, Sean? What does it mean?
So that's a very good question. I think high availability speaks to your requirement from a business point of view. SAP at the heart of the business often runs the core critical systems, your manufacturing environment, your key financials, things that the business really cannot do without. So having those systems available is obviously paramount to the business. But there's also the question about what is high availability. Are you talking about localized redundancy that give you certain peace of mind, or are you talking about a full high availability solution on premise or across data centers, or do you just require a DR or disaster recovery approach? So there's various ways of looking at it, and I think the understanding from the business and knowing what products needs to be highly available, and which parts of the business they can run manually for a period of time. Will help them make the right decisions to really customize the availability requirement within the business to what is needed.
So if we architect correctly, we can keep the manufacturing plant high available with 5 nines, and we can then segregate and have the HR function high availability Monday to Friday, 8 to 5 or 8 to 3 or whatever it is in that case, except over payroll or payment runs. Is the technology lending itself to that today?
Oh, definitely. Within SAP itself, there's certain functionalities that give you those abilities, and then obviously the lower end, the hardware, the actual platforms that it runs on, and then importantly the operating system and some of those supporting functions from SUSE. Lends a lot of that high availability functionality that is inherently built into the product.
Oh, awesome. Well, that's a good segue into Johan, who's looking like he's having a nap there. Let's ask him a tough question. Johan, I asked in the preparation, this migration discussion and these myths regarding 2027, should we still be having this call? Why do you think this is pertinent now for our attendees to talk around this migration and right now, today, at the end of 2021?
The reason why we have to have this discussion is that a lot of companies need to understand that they need to move by 2027 onto a Linux platform. But we work with a lot of companies around that to make sure that we drive the understanding on how they can basically go to S/4HANA onto a SUSE platform. But when we discuss these things with the CIs and we look at the availability around how organizations want to use it, do they want to go into cloud? Do they want to do on-prem? What is the appropriate way? Because there's so many things that companies need to understand and how they're going to build. Now, because I'm going to have a couple of discussions today with organizations to understand how they can achieve maybe the 5 nines, but it all comes down to the architectural designs of how and where they're going to basically deploy these components.
Okay.
Because you know what, if I look at the environments where they're going to look at, where's the storage? Are they going to go cloud? Are they going to go on-prem? Are they going to Kubernetes? What is the appropriate ways to do things? And I basically go into these sessions with the client and some of the CIs to understand what is the best approach. Now, as Sean has mentioned, is what is availability? What do we need to basically do around that? Availability means, is it available all the time? Where does the money come from? So if that core system where the money comes from goes down, what happens? What happens on the core? If you've got a plant, you've got a bank, you've got a retail, what happens in that environment if the core function of the business goes down?
Now,
And this is where I have discussions with the clients. Yes.
I mean, not to bring anyone down a peg, but this is not one person that's making the decision. I mean, when we are looking at a global mining house, they've got SAP in a number of countries. So we are probably going to be looking at a hybrid approach, and everyone's been on cloud for a number of years now. We're using multiple cloud providers. How is that factored into these migration discussions, or is it? Do we do these discussions in microcosms, or do we deal with it at the macro? What are you seeing as most common, Johan?
It's so everybody in the organizations have got a different view of where they want to go, and we need to basically bring these components in, because it's all about understanding availability. Okay. Why do people go onto cloud-driven strategies? Because they need to basically reduce the cost of maybe hardware or this or that or the other. But there is some trade-offs. So basically, if you go into cloud, then how you get your data back and so forth. So there's a lot of trade-offs in understanding how they're going to basically go from on-prem to cloud. But really, companies and organizations want to basically let go of the problems that they're experiencing. But the trade-off is to basically say, if they're going to go somewhere else on-prem or wherever the case may be, they need to change the business mindset to understand, yes, we're going into this direction or that direction, but there's going to be normally a team around that to understand from each individual aspect from the business, how do they align it so that the whole business is happy with the decision that they're going to go forward with.
Okay, that sounds like there's a lot of boardroom dancing that you go into before we even start the project. Sean, are you seeing customers that are starting these or midway through these migration projects in small segments, or do you see them all as an enterprise initiative? What is the trend out there that you're seeing?
So I think most companies that need to make this move have at least started. They've started, evaluating what they currently have in their environment and where are they going with this new replatforming or migration. So that obviously always starts at the business end, where they are mapping the functional use of the old system to the functional use of the new system. So I think at that level, yes, a lot of people are quite far down the road, and they're having some very good discussions with SAP and their implementation partners and those aspects of the project. The one area where I see a lot of people are kind of lagging behind is the technology discussion. They're focusing on the functional bit, which obviously makes sense. That is the core of the business, and they're trying to get business value out of this product. But there is an underlying environment that needs to support that new implementation or that migration. And we're seeing, I think, a lot of people kind of lagging there a little bit. Obviously, people are evaluating cloud and looking at all the new software as a service models that they could potentially move in. But Johan also touched on something there where he spoke about you're forfeiting something, or you are you're understanding that by making a decision into a certain new direction, you might be foregoing something that you had in the past. I always like to use this analogy about square pegs in round holes, and in IT we're very well known to be required to do that. And I think we've gotten quite good at it because you need to be agile, you need to be smart at how you do things. And if you look at a square peg that you're trying to get into that round hole, chances are you're going to get it in there. You're going to have to round off the edges a little bit and smooth it out, but you'll get it in. The core itself will remain the same, but you've changed the structure slightly. And understanding what changes you've made and what you are losing by rounding those edges, as long as you do that, you can't go wrong. It's just starting that process early and understanding, what changes you're making.
Okay. Raj has asked us a question, which I love. It's a segue into, so Raj, I'm getting to your question now, but I want to get a little bit more practical on debunking these myths. And the first one is the people that are involved in the project. And the question that Raj has put in front of us is, he said, we've delayed our migration journey because of the dearth of appropriate skills within our organization. Can you help us bridge the gap? Now that sounds like a sales opportunity right there. But what I want to ask is, Johan, where do people go to get the right skills? How can they upskill their team and then augment with a partner in order to make this migration successful? What are your advice steps for customers to get up to speed? Wow, that was terrible English, sorry. Johan? I've lost Johan. Sean, can you take that one for me? Have you got an opinion?
Yes. I think, as I mentioned at the beginning as well, with us making the change to CoCre8, there's this renewed vigor to working with partners. And I think, the skill shortage in this country really pushes us to work with people. See, Johan is coming back bits by bits.
Bit of a delay, Daniel.
Yes. Do you want to kill your video just for a bit to get back to us, and we'll come back to you? Okay, Johan. Sean, you carry on with your answer there.
Thanks. So I think working with partners, that is important. Us as CoCre8, we come with our partnership with Fujitsu from a SAP technology partner point of view. So we've got a wealth of knowledge in that department, but it doesn't mean that we've got all that information. So there we then work with a functional partner and an implementation partner. So for me, it's really working with those people that's walked this path before, and working with those that's got experience. Tap into what they've learned and what they've done. If you think about the SAP user community, AFSUG, that's an unbelievable user community that shares knowledge underneath each other or between each other, and have weekly and monthly updates on projects they've done, how they've overcome certain barriers, how they've achieved certain things. So I think that's a nice thing. The SAP community is very strong, and they're willing to share information.
Won't you pop that, when I leave you, won't you just pop that URL in the chat there so that we can make sure that it gets out there? I think that if I just want to go back onto Raj's question, if we want to get the right people, be plugged into the community so that we can understand where people are going. And the second is get the right partner. So you've got to meet the partner culturally and technically. They need to meet the partner to make sure they can get out of it. I did want to ask you, Han, your question before you popped off. Where would you advise customers to get up to speed on the elements that are required within a project like this? Where's your top 3 educational areas where you would go to?
So what we normally do is we go and engage with the client to understand exactly what they want to do. Because normally it's very, very, very important that we get all the stakeholders involved in the boardroom and we whiteboard the solution. Okay. And whiteboarding the solution is understanding exactly what they want to do and how they want to do it. Now, if there is, and I understand that there's a brain drain in South Africa because of the skill levels and things like that. And normally what we will do is we bring in a partner, or we can basically bring in SUSE Consulting to assess the scenarios and help them to achieve their goals. And I've been involved with lots of projects around that, understanding how we can actually assist them. But it's very crucial that we actually sit down with the client and understand where they want to go with the build out of the environment.
Awesome, awesome. We've got another question which I really like, which almost touched on, you answered, from Muzi, which is, how do we identify and select the right migration strategy for our organization? And Sean, how are you suggesting that people, are they going big bang? Are they going piecemeal? Are they going unit by unit? What are you seeing as the most common? And how do you suggest people select their strategy?
That's a very difficult question, because we know every customer is different. Every environment looks different. So it really is understanding the environment, knowing where you are and where you want to go. So basic project fundamentals. But then also, using tool sets out there. There's lots of very nice methodologies that's been developed specifically for these types of migrations. And most of the implementation and migration partners will have a wealth of knowledge around those methodologies and tool sets that they've used. And then tools. There's actual migration tools that's been developed that helps this migration go quicker, easier, those kinds of things. Then the design itself, again, it depends on the organization, the budget, and maturity. I think maturity is a very important thing to consider there. If the company is mature enough to be able to handle a big bang change to going from full on-premise to full on cloud, then have it. If there is concerns about not understanding the end destination well enough, how do you get the information to understand where you're going, and then make the design decisions around that. So as Johan also mentioned, the engagement is very important. Having an opportunity to ask the right questions to be able to get the answers and guide a design from there is absolutely key. There has to be communication, there has to be constant engagement, and questions and answers that flow back and forth continuously.
So when we're talking about the processes that people are following on a project of this nature, you were saying lots of communication with the stakeholders, identify the pain that you want to meet. And is it as simple as the pain is we have to modernize because SAP said so? Is that a reason to upgrade, Johan? Oh, Sean, shame, I'm losing poor Johan here. He's looking amazing. He looks like a model. Sean, is that okay? Wait, go, Johan. No, I lost him. Sean, is the reason to upgrade simply that SAP said so?
I don't think I really want to answer that question.
That's a tough question. That's a tough. I'll answer it. Yes, that's an answer.
Unfortunately, it's like running your notebook on Windows XP when Windows 10 is available. At some point, Microsoft is going to come around and say, "Sorry, I'm not supporting XP anymore. You now have to go." And that's unfortunately a scenario you're going to get into with any product. And in the case that SAP is like that, is the reality. But that being said, there is a wealth of opportunity with this migration. You can right some wrongs from the past. You can re-engineer your environment to really suit your business, which has evolved. Things have gone from a batch-driven environment to real-time analytics and real-time information, real-time business decision-making, which this new product enables. So having an opportunity to redesign the environment, whether it's forced or not, comes with opportunity that you can then really do things differently and better, and then take it from there.
So if we go back to one of the reasons for this discussion, it was debunking the myth that we've got a lot of time for this. If we are looking at fixing things we didn't know when we first implemented SAP, or when we first rolled out an ERP solution across the enterprise. What are some of the common traps that people are falling into today as part of their projects, which is resulting in a less than optimal migration from a people, process, and policy perspective?
I think for me, the biggest one is trying to mirror what you currently have and simply just pushing everything into this new environment. Unfortunately,
just pause there. Just, Kerry, how many times have we heard this? Hey, I mean, Sean hasn't been prepped for this. So all our attendees, if you're upgrading, things are going to change. So I'm busy using an orange calculator. I want a faster orange calculator. It doesn't work.
100%.
How do you do that change, Sean? What is CoCre8's role in that, in changing hearts and minds?
So unfortunately, we are not a functional partner. So from that application, change point of view, we rely on our partners to help guide that.
Okay.
But making the change from an older SAP to S4, takes you into in-memory computing. It takes you into having to go to a Linux platform, which in the past you had a choice of running something different. So there we do come in quite a bit and help understand, what does that mean? What opportunities do we get from going into in-memory technology, going into having a full Linux environment, and how does that open source community change the way I've done things in the past?
Okay. Johan, from your perspective, are you seeing problems with outdated policies holding projects back? Sean, my question is coming back to you. Poor Johan is having some issues. For all our attendees, Johan is the better looking of
Sean
this. No, we've got you. Sean, do you see that policies are keeping up to date with what we require from a perspective of the modern environment to embrace all of Hannah's new offerings?
Yes, I believe so. The nice thing about this is that people are forced to update those policies. And I see them really embracing that. They do take the opportunity to update their policies, update their way of work, really modernizing the business as is intended with SAP S/4HANA, is modernizing the business, this whole technology update drive, going forward. So yes, it can be a stumbling block, and you do come across those instances where, the old way of work is a difficult thing to get away from. But yeah, the changes are happening, and sometimes feels a little bit forced, but they're happening because they have to. The nature of evolution, I guess.
I remember doing an upgrade and implementation at an SOE, and the policy worked in contradiction with the functionality of the system. And the specific case where it came through was on education. Now, in this organization, you got leave to study, but you couldn't go into negative leave. But if you failed your course, then the leave was then claimed back. So people could go into negative leave, but that put the system into a spiral because it didn't know how to deal with it. And it was a policy change that was required. And that took us about a year to get right. We've got a very interesting question now. I'm going to go alcoholics. I'm going to go anonymous, attendee anonymous, because Simpiwe, I'm not going to read out your surname because his question is a confession as well. So Simpiwe says, we have used SAP ECC for the past decade. And as embarrassing as it is, yes, Simpiwe, you should hang your head. We are still trying to deal with large, unwieldy, siloed, and unclean data landscape, thanks to years of data accumulation across business units. My question for Sean, does this mean our migration will be more complicated because we're migrating older legacy systems? What a great question. What a great, honest Simpiwe. So
I
Sean,
think
is
there's,
he in cuck? Is he in cuck?
I have good news, not necessarily. You know, I'm gonna mention, you know, we've got a partner that we work with, IPU's Labs. They've developed some fantastic tools that help with the migration and that also allow you to carve out data. So if you've got legacy data that you need taken out of the system to help this migration go quicker and easier and, you know, smoother, you're able to do that. So again, I'm going to come back to what I said in the beginning is the partner landscape is unbelievable out there with the amount of tools and experience they've got in doing migrations like this. And whether it is carving out a company out of your SAP system, you know, maybe splitting companies and you need to carve out data, or whether it's just getting rid of legacy data as part of this migration, it is possible. You know, yes, you're going to have a lot of things to think about. There's definitely some considerations that other parties might not need to think of, but it's not necessarily all doom and gloom. There's some fantastic opportunities to you know, to again right some of the wrongs, and to go in with a cleaner system at the end, and you know, do things differently going forward. Even if you do need that data, you can still clean it up a little bit and then put it back into this newly migrated environment. So a lot of things are possible.
Oh, that's brilliant. So that technical debt doesn't have to hold people back from making this migration. It needs to be considered, but it's not a break for the project.
No, definitely not.
That's brilliant.
I'm sure if you look at this project and you know the effort and time that's going to go into a migration like this, it probably looks like a mountain, but it definitely can be succumbed.
Oh, brilliant. One more question, and then I'm going to see if we've got Johan back. Johan, are you back there, buddy?
I'm hoping so. Sorry for this. It was just
that's okay. Okay, Johan, just a question to you. Do you think companies are falling into the trap of oversimplifying the effort required in a migration of this nature?
I think it's a combination of two. Some of what I've actually seen is they trying to over-engineer it, and sometimes they are trying to simplify too much. So there's a mutual ground where you have to basically get everything aligned very nicely, and this is where we need to be very, very.
Please go off your video. Okay, we have officially lost our Johan. We've lost him. I'm sorry about that to all your attendees. I know you only came for Johan. But Sean, I'm going to ask you to answer that question. Do you want me to pose it to you again?
Yes, please.
So what I've said is, are you seeing companies oversimplifying these migrations, and how, especially when they're going to the board? I think that's what I'm quite interested in.
So again, I think from a functional point of view, no. You know, they're definitely asking very tough questions to SAP and the implementation landscape out there. So from that point of view, no, I don't think so. From a platform and technology point of view, maybe the answer is a bit of both. You do get the instances where things are heavily over-engineered. You know, we spoke about HA earlier, and you know, taking a blanket approach and just making everything highly available, which is fantastic if you can afford it. You know, every bit of availability comes at a cost. So that to me would be over-engineered. And then there's other instances where it's almost a blanket approach of pushing everything into the public cloud, and you know, don't worry, they're taking care of it. Which, you know, sometimes is a trap, especially if you don't understand the cloud economics. You don't understand necessarily that it's a two-way street. You know, it's just going into the public cloud, and the whole cloud journey is, you know, both parties are wholly responsible. So that could be a form of oversimplification.
Yeah.
So a bit of both. I think there's some very good work being done to get it right. It just takes more effort and a little bit better planning. How do you make sure you don't fall in either one of those traps? It's a matter of time and working with the partners and understanding their business.
Okay, that's really good to know. I think that the role that relationship between the SI, the OEM, so the partner, SAP, and the customer play it's one of the areas where complexity can creep in because of project bureaucracy and because of contracting, and everybody wants the best deal for themselves, and we could be just sticking an oar in it and hurting our project. I want to ask you another question. When we see this reduction in complexity as one of the aims that we want to get at through the project, where does migration management sit? Is this a business function? Is it an IT function? Is it the CEO function?
I would say it sits in the middle. Definitely a business function, but IT these days is not a department that sits in the corner anymore. They are heavily part of the business. So it definitely comes from both sides. Ultimately, they would be a responsible decision maker. But especially in the SAP space, SAP, people often think SAP is this IT software product out there, but it's a business tool, which means business needs to drive the decisions within that system. IT then comes in as a supporting function to make sure the platforms are available, to make sure the systems are sized correctly, to make sure the performance and the speed and the availability is there that needs to be there. It's definitely, I think, sits in both realms. Definitely cannot be done just by IT. That's for sure.
Okay, so this is more of this is a collaborative effort. I'm hearing people getting it really, really right, but quite often getting it wrong, and politics gets in the way. We're not going to go down that rabbit warren. If you would advise a client who's now been going and maybe stalled and stopped, what are the first 3 steps to get this migration back moving in your mind?
So again, if I split it between a functional view and a technical view, functionally understanding the functional requirements and working with SAP in the business to map that to the new version. Secondly, economics, especially if you're talking cloud, hybrid cloud, or on-premise, knowing where the IT landscape is going to eat into that budget, and how do you manage that. And then I think scope creep and kind of, let's call it the old siloed approach. There is definitely an opportunity to do some consolidation, to simplify things. If you think about 5 different departments doing things their own way, consolidating that into a single process, that is the easiest way of simplification. And then today, and I think Johan can comment a lot on that, is automation. There is so much opportunity for automation in this migration, where you can take daily tasks, and make it almost, not applicable to you. Things that in the past took a lot of effort from people on a daily basis, you can really simplify and make easier.
Okay. Johan, are you seeing people take enough advantage of automation?
In 2 minutes, Dan, he's hot.
Okay, no problem. Shame, man. So
okay, Sean, let's try this again.
There we go. So your question, Johan, was during this migration time, are you seeing people take enough advantage of modernization like automation, which is now available, which wasn't available 5 years ago?
Not really, because what I've noticed with a lot of customers is they still prefer the manual process. And when I engage with the clients, the automation piece and sometimes getting neglected because a lot of people feel that it's that maybe it's causing a problem for them, or they're going to basically have an issue with it. But when I go and speak to the clients, I can ask them to what extent do they want to automate. Do they want to automate to 80%, 90%, to 100%? Because those type of things is to basically deploy it in any type of scenario. If they use, let's say, Salt or Chef or Puppet or Ansible, whatever the case may be, those are the correct criteria that we need to understand how they can basically do it. But also from a high availability sense is, do you want to have human interaction if anything goes wrong? Now, if you want to basically go and see why the cluster broke or anything like that, or you just want to have it automated, failover automatically. But what I've noticed with a lot of clients is they still feel that they need to get manual intervention when they build out these environments.
Okay. Do you want to add anything to that, Sean? Is there anything that you're seeing where people are missing the opportunity to modernize, whether it's through automation or anything else on these projects?
I don't want to jump the gun, but I saw a comment or a question about people moving more towards orchestration rather than automation. And I think that's a very key point there. The orchestration
We've got bright
tools,
guests, eh? We've got bright guests.
It's definitely true that orchestration, especially now that we're talking hybrid cloud, you know, the whole function of orchestration and bridging the gap between on-premise and public cloud, you know, brings that orchestration function to the forefront. And yeah, I think you know, that is an opportunity. Again, there's some fantastic tools out there that give you that orchestration functionality, that, you know, that collapses a lot of the operational effort into a single function. You know, that saves time, it saves effort, it maybe reduces a little bit of complexity. There's so much value in that orchestration function.
Oh, that's amazing. I really like that. I think that as part of these journeys, there's got to be benefits which are wrapped up. They might not be the central theme for why we are doing this migration, but certainly they've got to be adding business benefit today. And I really like what the comment about orchestration, because we get to reuse. Let's get on to the elephant in the room, Sean, controlling costs. We're about to spend a lot of money. We've paused our upgrade. 2027 is around the corner, but we've just had COVID. We've just had a retrenchment cycle, which we hate. We've just had the country and the continent in turmoil. Is SAP not just going to put this out again?
I think they're under pressure to try and do that. Unfortunately, you know, they have already moved it out once from 2025 to 2027. So they have made that move once before. And I guess, you know, as with anything, if you have the right justification, they will probably allow you to not make the move, but it is going to come at a cost. You know, they do charge your yearly maintenance fees and your support costs. So that cost is going to increase, because the effort for them to now support an older version of the product increases, which means that the cost for the support will increase. So will they likely extend it? I don't think so. Is there alternatives? Definitely. I think a lot of people are now re-looking at their environment saying, okay, in the past, I used to use SAP for absolutely all the functions. Maybe there's one or two of these functions that I can now move to a different product. Maybe a software as a service offering, maybe, you know, something else that is a pure cloud play, and only then keep the core of my system on premise or in a hosted cloud environment. So thereby reducing that complexity, reducing some of the unknowns that you don't know about this new version of SAP S/4HANA. So again, different approaches depending on the business, depending on your business requirements. But people are doing some very smart things to climb this mountain.
Yeah, and it's a mountain that we have to climb. And if we're thinking about climbing a mountain, there's a lot of equipment that goes with it. We're buying all this equipment to make it a safe climb. Why are we hearing so much about project overspends? Do you think the market is overreacting and we're just concentrating? Why are we not hearing about more of the wins that have just gone through, and it's like, oh, that migration was easy and now we've enabled edge computing and everything else?
Maybe a little bit of a personal opinion here, but I think IT people are ever optimistic. We are always optimistic that we can deliver this project in time and on budget, and maybe not adding enough headroom and fat into the planning phase. And then I think there's as the world evolves, things become more complex, or things change to the degree where you don't necessarily understand it as well as what the thing that came before it. So understanding the new, understanding cloud economics, I think that's something that comes through so often, where the fundamentals about cloud it's a no-brainer. It makes a lot of sense. But understanding the true cloud economics of how this will affect my monthly spend, going from a predictable, maybe cyclical budget spend to now maybe a flexible monthly spend, is quite a big change to understand. And I don't think people always understand that. So that then translates into the project, and how the project then overruns and gets overspent on. Okay.
I love your emphasis on the fact that we're optimistic. We stand in front of the board, we're optimistic. When we look back at the team, we get really pessimistic, and somewhere in between we do some stuff. Do you think that one of the optimistic problems we have is that we think our operational support team can carry on doing their functional job whilst doing this migration? Or do you think that was just me looking for a question?
No, unfortunately in South Africa it is a reality. The question got raised earlier about skills and the availability of skills, which means a lot of us often do this double hatting exercise, where you wear your operational hat and then you wear your project hat. In my world, I wear a sales hat, I wear a pre-sales hat, I'm an architect. So you do a little bit of both, because it's difficult finding the right skills and it comes at a cost. So there's definitely a trade-off, and I think that's definitely one of the pitfalls that we unfortunately have to deal with in this environment.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, when we put that question together, and Johan just laughed, if you think that your team can do their job, their day job, and do a migration of this magnitude at night, seriously, you got to question your understanding of the complexity of your own business. I just think it's asking far too much, even of South African people. How do we make it more manageable or predictable? Is there fixed price recommendations? Are there rapid deployment plans? How do we take the uncertainty out? Johan, if you're there, I'd love your opinion on this from a pre-sales perspective. How do we make sure that during the pre-sales cycle we err as much as possible? Okay, Sean, go.
Just repeat the question again. Just sorry, Dan.
How do we make it more predictable for our stakeholders? How do they know what they are getting? Because quite often our attendees are the ones footing the bill, as opposed to the ones doing the heavy lifting. How do we give them a roadmap that they can see what's coming?
I think that's a difficult question to answer.
Good.
Again, I think every business is different. So obviously, project methodologies come into play there. Having the right project plan, communication with the stakeholders. That's fundamentally inherent to what you're trying to achieve. So yeah, it really is a tough one to answer because it depends.
Okay, so I can't take it depends. That doesn't help our attendees. Give me your top 3 ways of giving predictability that you would recommend.
So for me, I would say understanding the environment.
Okay.
And
so that upfront scoping of what we are doing, you've said it before, the functional mapping of where we want to go. Okay.
Yeah, and that also speaks to the technical side.
The interfaces, integrations, data points that we're looking at.
Yeah, and
Okay.
the current usage of the environment and how that translates into a future environment.
Okay.
So the opportunity to re-architect the environment, to size it correctly. If you think about a lot of the
okay, but just wait. What we're doing first is we're giving predictability. So the first thing is we've got to give an artifact to this committee that's going to pay for it. That presentation, if we put it on the ground, to go back 20 years, that's our as-is state. How many people ever revisit that and remember how they've got there?
Definitely, no, for sure. But again, I think that's where there's some very nice tools out there that can give you a snapshot.
Okay.
That can give you over a period of a month end or a year end, you can run these tools, get a report, and get a snapshot of what do we have at the moment, and how do you translate into where you're going.
Okay, awesome. Then the second thing is we would get the scope clarification of where we want to arrive at, and that would be where you architect for the modern environment. Do you revisit that during projects? Do you see that as a once-off, or do you see that as a continually visited artifact to make sure we're keeping up?
It has to be continually visited.
Okay.
So it's something you come back to as often as possible, to make sure that as you clarify the journey you're on, that you also adjust your landscape to fit to that end destination that's evolving as you go through this project.
Okay, awesome. And do you think the temptation is, now that there's little time left for this migration, where people are just tempted to get careless and just migrate anything? Just, I don't care what it is, just migrate this cuck.
Definitely. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. But there is definitely the wish to just be able to migrate everything and to try and throw everything at this all at once.
Okay.
But that's why the whole topic of today is that 2027. That's 5 years from now. So why are you telling me I'm running out of time? We're saying this because it is not a quick and easy process to go through or project to take on. So the sooner you start planning, the sooner you start thinking about this, that 2027 deadline is not going to loom over you, come the last couple of months.
So start now. It's like our kids with exams. Don't start studying maths on the Friday when you write on the Monday. We've got to start it way before. Steve Kowalski has just put some wisdom in the Q&A. Steve, I really want you to copy that into the chat. Before implementing using Big Bang, please read the story of Bing Bank implementation at the London Stock Exchange. This day, the New York Stock Exchange was open before the London Stock Exchange. So, Steve, thanks for sharing that in the Q&A. I am with you. The only time you want a big bang was a long time ago. We've moved way past that. And if we aren't architecting for a sensible release strategy here, there's got to be darn fine reasons for that, and you're going to struggle to find them. Sean, we've avoided asking you this question until we've got 5 minutes left for you and Johan. Have you seen Okay, it's a two-part question. Have you seen any mistakes that you would like us to avoid? And the second one, would you say the companies that you are seeing in the South African landscape and the SADC landscape, because we're talking to all of you, are ready for this migration?
So mistakes wise, I think the only one I've really noticed was people trying to go at it alone. You know, there's organizations that's got some fantastic in-house skills that have done upgrades before, and you know, I've done a project like this, don't worry, I've got this. Where you know there's some pitfalls, and people can really learn from those that's done it before. So you know, try not to go at it alone. Yeah, you know, walk with those that's walked the path before. That's, you know, the best approach for me that I've seen that really had good results.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Johan, if you've got
Yes.
if you've got a wrap up, you can try it, or you can type your answer in there. But Johan, would you say companies are ready for this migration? And if we still got you, what were the 3 pieces of advice you would say for people who are midway through this migration and maybe having a December pause? What would you give them for 2022?
My advice to them would be bring the likes of myself and Sean in, and let's understand the path of what they want to do and how they want to do it. Because it's very, very important that we actually walk the journey with them. Because there's a lot of movable parts, and we need to make sure that if a successful migration is going to occur, that all the building blocks is basically aligned. Now, a lot of people go by themselves, as Sean was basically saying it, but we are here to basically help them to understand what they want to do and how they want to do it.
Awesome, thank you very much. Sean, you're coming to the end of your year. What is your focus from a CoCre8 perspective for the next 3 months?
I think for us, it's re-energizing. You know, with COVID, there's been so many projects put on hold, so many projects, you know, put on the back seat that you know, things are picking up in the new year. We're expecting them to pick up in the new year. A lot of projects to be reinstated. So that you know, kind of re-energizing, refocusing on, you know, where can we help, where can we assist, where can we go on this journey with you, and taking the partners with. You know, I mentioned it in the beginning, the renewed focus on partners like SUSE. It's fundamental to what we do. So I'm excited about that for the next quarter.
Awesome. And then I'm going to ask both you and Johan my trademark question. I've already kind of asked Johan, so Johan, you can take this with a pinch of salt. But Sean, what would your advice be for a team that is midway through their migration for 2022? What would you suggest is 3 things where they could get improvement?
Stakeholder engagement, communication, and knowing where you're going. You know, understanding that end destination, and don't lose sight of that.
Awesome, awesome. So stakeholder engagement, make sure everybody is around the table at the right time. Communicate, so there's no surprise management, and then that clarity of vision. And I think you've touched on it by, if we get that scope clarification again and again, we should be it should be no surprises as we get there. I really like that. Thank you very much. Sean and Johan, you've been under lots of pressure on this webinar. I'm very sorry for your connection issues, but thank you for being guests here. Thank you, Sean, for diving in. This 425,000 customers using SAP. If you're using SAP, you're in good company. I think that this migration is not going to go away. So 2027 is not that far away in the future. So if you haven't got your handle on your migration strategy now, Sean and Johan are waiting for your call. Do not forget the small integration points. They will come back and bite you. From my side, Daniel Robus, if I'm not going to see you again, have a magic December. Have a good break if you're taking a break. If you're like Carrie and I, just work. Yeah, Carrie, back to you.
So thanks again, guys, for joining us for today's session. I really do hope that you found it insightful and we answered some of your questions. We always, like to get feedback on how we run these sessions, what you liked, how we can improve to assist you on your journey. So please feel free to reach out to myself and let us know what you thought. We will be doing a webinar report back that will publish as editorial, so I'll let you know when this is live. Cheers, guys. This is our last webinar for the year. So I really look forward to engaging with you in 2022 again. We'll see you then at the next one in the new year. Have a great day.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.